All right, Lance, thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, want to talk a little bit about your background and impact competition, everything you're doing in this space. But to kind of kick things off, was curious if you could just talk a little bit. You have a unique background, so wanted to hear a little bit about your kind of career background and how you got here.
Sure. Well, the truth is, I had no prior nonprofit experience whatsoever. In fact, it was almost the exact opposite, where I went to school at Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. I majored in finance. And following that degree, I ended up getting a job on Wall Street at a firm called Trillium. And I was a stock trader for over a decade there. I still trade stocks today while also running the impact competition.
So that sounds like a real natural combination, right? That's so interesting to go from kind of one thing to the next. So okay, so you're a stock trader, right? You're having success there. You're probably loving your career. Why and how did you end up creating impact competition? And maybe talk a little bit about kind of when that started.
Yeah. So it's so funny how I ended up working with schools is because around 2017, I was 6 years into my job, into my career. And so the university, they always reach back to you and they say, hey, would you like to donate a little bit? Would you like
Yep.
to donate? And my excuse to myself was I do not want to donate to the so-called black hole where it's like, is my $100 or $300 or $500 or $1,000 really going to make a difference to a large school like Indiana University?
Yeah.
And that had been my excuse. And so finally I said to myself, well, Lance, if that's going to be your cop out, then what cause would you donate to? Where do you think your money actually would make a difference?
Yeah.
And so I started to do some research. I started to read stuff like the Bill Gates Foundation letters, and read a different amount of books on the subject. And the concept that clicked for me is that the same way money compounds, me being the finance stock trader,
Yep.
so does impact. And so my thought was, how can I find the idea that takes the smallest amount of money and compounds into the biggest amount of change? And that solution ended up being the impact competition, where we fund these competitions at universities and challenge students to solve local social issues. We give them a cash prize and seed money to then implement their idea. So we're impacting the students. We're helping a local nonprofit. We're helping the constituents of the nonprofit. So you've got this feedback loop where we like to say we want to turn these students into volunteers, future donors, and future socially minded individuals. And we think we do a very good job doing that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the students obviously become an important part of it. And so as you described, though, they're actually the ones who are out finding the local nonprofits and helping solve those problems, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, so most schools will have a local organizer. So the organizer and the coordinator is essential in us executing these competitions. They help us be attuned to what type of issues the students are most interested in. They're attuned to what type of issues are most topical to their specific college campus. And so we will do things like University of Chicago. We worked with an organization called Strides for Peace that is trying to prevent gun violence that we all know is a major problem. So students then get exposed to these issues and they see the different constraints in the system. Why does this issue exist? What can we do to help make it a little bit better in a local, actionable way?
And the schools, your partners in this, obviously really have to love the work that you're doing because you're providing students with really valuable hands-on experience.
Oh, absolutely. And what's so amazing is these coordinators are as emotionally involved and invested as we are. They love seeing the success stories of these students. They love seeing the students all of a sudden have these epiphanies of the complexities of these problems, but then also recognizing that when you try and tackle these issues, like you're not going to solve gun violence on a national scale. You're not going to solve food insecurity on a national scale. But can you make your local neighborhood? Can you help that nonprofit so that your neighborhood's a little bit safer? Can you help your local food bank so that your community is a little bit less hungry?
Yeah.
And that's what really empowers these students, and the coordinators get to witness the joys of seeing that.
That's awesome. So You mentioned this earlier, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into it. This idea of compounding positive change, right? Your finance background, and and as you put it earlier, kind of how do you take a little bit and make it a lot? But I guess talk a little bit more about kind of how and why this drives you and how it really serves as an important part of impact competition.
Sure. So I think anybody that knows finance knows about money compounding and how exponential that impact can be. And I think there's this narrative that exists because you know about how money compounds, where it's like, oh, wait, if I don't spend $500 today, in the future, that might be $1,000, $3,000, $5,000, and eventually $10,000. And that is smart investing and smart savings. However, though, if you think about it, a lot of positive impact also compounds. And that's what incentivizes me to actually give back. And yes, you want to take care of yourself, you and yours, and make sure you're comfortable. But then that excess can make such a huge difference in the world. So to give one example and why our motto is compounding positive change is I do these competitions, take one at my alma mater, Indiana University. We did a competition there. And we touch on average at that school, probably about 60 students per competition. To take a case study of one of those students, that student was so inspired that now as an investment banker, he went into totally for-profit world, went to Wall Street. He's an investment banker. He is committed to giving a certain percentage of his bonus every year during his career, which is amazing. So now that one competition affects students that stay on as volunteers. Some end up donors, some he's still volunteering with underprivileged youth. And now all the beneficiaries, not just from that competitions year, but you talk about how much one competition affects people. And it ends up the original 50 students and the beneficiaries from that nonprofit, they end up affecting 200 people. Those 200 people affect 500 people. Those 500 affect 3,000 people eventually and more. And so that's really our vision for compounding positive change.
I love that because obviously, and what's interesting about it though is there are so many stories that you'll never be aware of the benefits, right? But that's great, and that's still okay, and that's still rewarding for you. But you're never going to know all of the different ways. But it's great to have these case studies and these examples of people who are able to share with you, like, here's how I'm paying it forward myself. And that that root was started and the seeds of that were planted in this competition.
And that's the most important aspect, I think, of experiential giving and being a part of these competitions and speaking with these students and seeing the impact. Because I'm a believer that, yes, you want to try and quantify your impact, but not everything in this world can be quantified, right? As an organization, we're always asking, how can we quantify what we've done? Yeah. But let's face it, we're a very small, lean team. Our ability to track 500 plus students per year, 5-10 years into the future, it's impossible. And so there are so many case studies and examples that we absolutely will never know about. Yeah. But you need to have some level of faith where you take your objective data and then you take your experiential data and wow, I don't know just how big of an impact and I can't quantify everything, but I know this is big and I know the ROI is massive.
Yeah. So I guess let's take even a quick step back. We'll hit on a couple of kind of quick hitter questions that I'm curious about. But what sparked your interest in philanthropy? Like, I know you had this career and you were getting solicitations from your alma mater, but like, what keeps you so motivated and passionate about giving back and philanthropy and passing that on to others?
Yep. So I would say, at least for me, there's two sides. There's the logical side of why I do it, and then there's the emotional side of why I do it. So logically, I read a book many years ago called The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer. It's very, very popular. And what that book discusses is all the psychological biases we have about giving, right? Where it's like, if your family member is homeless, if your family member is struggling with some disease, if your family member is going hungry, you will do everything in your power. There's no amount you would not spend for, your parent, your sibling, your kids. You would do it. However, there are people out there that it's someone's brother, it's someone's daughter, it's someone's son, and they
Yeah.
are going hungry. They are dying of diseases. They are getting malaria. They are malnutritioned. And just because we're not just tribally connected to them. Like it's one of the flaws of our human evolution is
Yeah.
the tribalism, which has good reason, right? Because we want to protect our family and ourselves.
Yeah.
But then I think if we get past that, we recognize, hey, we're all one. I don't
Yeah.
want others to suffer. Everyone deserves what I have, which has been lucky to be given education and a high quality of life and the opportunity to work super hard and get to where I've gotten. And so
Yeah.
logically, it's like everyone deserves that. But then there's the other side of the equation, which I think is the more powerful side, because I think logically everyone recognizes that there's people worse off. But the more important side is the emotions. And what I've found is being the Wall Street trader, you can make money, you can have nice dinners, you can do all these things, and it's great at first. But then hedonic adaptation, again, our primal psychology, we adapt to these things. And what I found that we don't adapt to and always stays lasting happiness and fulfillment is when we spend time with community, whether it's friends and family, and then also when we help others. And
Yeah.
when we help others, it gives us this sense of gratitude and the sense of enough that we otherwise never have. And so I've found it's not really about doing it from a stance of moral superiority or a stance of righteousness or moral obligation or anything, but it's more so that I enjoy doing this. I feel better when I do this. And I finally feel gratitude for my own situation when you see the suffering of others and you feel empowered and fulfilled when you can help others be relieved from it.
That's awesome. That's great. I think a great lesson for all of us and a great perspective. So this will probably be a hard one for you. So, I'm sure you could go on for days about this, but in just kind of a quick hitter, what are you most proud of since launching this? Knowing that, you really had this vision from the ground up, but what are you most proud of today?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's mostly the students and the case studies. And for example, it's the endless students that they start off their presentation and obviously everybody wants the prize, everybody wants to win, but the amount of students that say, look, I don't care whether we win or lose. I am invested in this cause now, and I still want to stay on and volunteer and help you all.
Yeah.
Or it's when you go to the University of Houston and one year's partner was the Houston Food Bank, and you have students say, the reason why I'm participating in this competition is because when I was a kid, the Houston Food Bank fed me and my family. Or you have a student who's a single mother presenting, and she says, the reason why I'm helping the Houston Food Bank is because they currently help feed me and my daughter. And you hear stories like that, and you see these students make real changes and that they genuinely care about these issues. We had a University of Chicago student that won our competition. He came back to me and independently, he was researching the negative externalities of lead battery recycling in developing countries like Ghana. And I privately funded him to go out there and do the research that eventually funded some WHO white papers on solving this issue. And so you get these amazing, inspiring stories of students that just genuinely care about a better world.
Right. And it all goes back to your point earlier about compounding the positive impact, right? I mean, that trip to Ghana and that work was not, specifically and immediately part of that project. It's a continuation, right? It's that compounding impact that extends, even beyond it. So, okay. So you're, a handful of years in, you have a number of projects and competitions that are going, and more certainly on the horizon. But what is your vision for the future? Where do you want to grow this?
Yeah, my vision is right now we're probably about a dozen schools. I would love to see this at 30, 40, 50 schools around the country. I would love for students to go home from Thanksgiving break and they're speaking with their high school friends and they say, oh, I just participated in my school's impact competition. And they say, no way, we have that program too.
Yeah.
And I want to see a world where we have thousands of students going through this programming every single year. And I want to see a world where all of that change compounds so that we are affecting hundreds of thousands of lives for the better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very attainable goal over the next 5 years.
So the final logical question is, how do people get involved, right? Obviously you have these, these great competitions at a number of campuses, but, for the broader population, how can they support and, kind of help fuel the growth and the impact that you're having?
Sure. So the simplest, easiest way, as silly as it sounds, following us on social. This is a world where eyeballs and attention and credibility is based on following and getting a message out. And so following us on social, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all of that helps. If you have connections with universities, if you want to bring this to your school or your alma mater, go to our website, impactcompetition.org. Reach out to us. If you want to be a donor, we're always accepting money to help make this impact a reality. If you want to judge and sit in on a competition, reach out to us. It's when you experience the incredible joy of seeing these students work and their ideas, when you're a part of it, that is when the real magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, obviously you can visit the website, impactcompetition.org. Lance, thank you for joining us today. It was really, really fun. I think you're doing absolutely incredible work, and appreciate you giving us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain on, kind of how it started, where it's going, and just to, really share your passion for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for helping us amplify what we do.
Absolutely.